Okay, guys, welcome back. We're going to be talking about World War I, the Great War. That's what that war that was supposed to end all wars. Okay, this is going to be kind of a review, information from also what you have in your textbook, your packets that you were given, and all those other great things. So this is kind of summations that help you with your test, and also even more so to help you with your writing of an essay or FRQ or DBQ that happens to be on the subject. Okay, so we're going to look at the years of World War One. Are normally given as 1914 and 1919. Now, you may actually see a variation of these dates by a year or two, give or take 1 or 2 years from either end. That is because of the concept of who joined the war at what year and who becomes involved in what year. So the variations, but most people give the World War One as being 1914 to 1919. So you should kind of remember those dates, and they're kind of important. We do know that World War One is an extremely costly war, both financially worldwide, and it also is extremely costly in human lives. Um, Something we're going to look at. Okay, this is a in-your-face type of war. It's a hand-to-hand combat type of war. Um, it's a brutal war. It's definitely redefines the way warfare is being fought, as we have discussed in class several times. The concept being that war has completely changed. It's not the old wars that the individuals had fought prior to this war. You have new technology, new inventions that have been developed over time. And unfortunately, a lot of the commanders and people who are involved in this war are kind of stuck in the old world type of warfare. So they have to adjust to that as well. Okay, as we said, totally extremely costly. There's a total casualties of 37 million people. For example, 16 million deaths, 21 million wounded, both military and civilian. Your allied powers are also known as the ante powers. Okay, 55, excuse me, 5.7 million soldiers. You should know, write these down if you don't have them, who the allied powers were. Some of them are usually referred to or easily recognizable, especially like Great Britain, France, Russia, Serbia, and of course, then later on, then the U.S. But there's also Greece, there's also Italy, Portugal, examples as well. Your Central Powers, they lose about 4 million soldiers. That's basically Austria-Hungary, Bulgaria, Germany, and the Ottoman Empire. And later, the Ottoman Empire kind of goes away, becomes Turkey. Neutral powers, as I mentioned in class the other day, you have about approximately 13% of their population is affected by this war. Remember, they are neutral, so they're not combatant soldiers. That a lot of it's civilians that are wiped out during this war, and those three are Denmark, excuse me, Norway, and Sweden. So you should know those as well. So what did they get out of for 37 million people? What actually did they get in this war? So basically, what they got is about 18 feet of real estate. Now, goalpost, if I'm not mistaken, is 18.6 or 18 something other. And it's a little bit more than 18 feet, but it gives you an idea of actually approximately how much real estate that they're fighting over at any one given time. And that is mainly due to the concept of the trench warfare. Um, the principle of actually moving very slowly, almost like worms in the ground, just trying to inch their way further and further and closer. You fight for a small piece of real estate, and then you gain that, and you constantly go back and forth. So trench warfare is it's a really nasty type of war, and a lot of this is because of this new technology, these new weapons that are being used that had never been used before. Before you didn't have people that digging ditches all over the place, trying to inch their way forward. I mean, you just charged across the field, you faced one another man to man, and you literally did not have to do this. Now, because of the new weaponry, it became very obvious that you can't just go, meet one another face to face because machine guns would mow you down. Mustard gas and other types of gas bombs that were being used during this war. And like I said, airplanes become an important instrument in this war as well. So, so the question is, how did this all happen, and how can you remember the key points? And that is what we're going to talk about today. The more you know, the facts that you have. It's basically basic information of which you can use in it, like I said, an FRQ, DBQ, or even on the multiple choice section of the test. So there's a good way of actually remembering this. Okay, it's kind of like having an acronym of which to help you remember this. So the acronym is going to be the main spark of World War I. And the key elements of this acronym, okay, are going to be the main and the spark. Okay, so if you just remember this, the main spark of World War I. If you remember the concepts behind main and spark, you'll pretty well have this theme down so you can do excellent. So we're going to start off with starting with the letters in main. Okay, and I'm not sure exactly why my screen went blank, but it should not be blank at this point. Okay, just really slow. Okay, first the M, okay, in main, is military. It stands for militarism. It's a very key concept because of the fact that it's basically a race to build weapons. So remember that. So militarism, the concept is the race to actually build up weapons. You also have armies and navies, okay, building up those large armies, building up those large navies. And remember, this is supposed to be a time when nothing's really going on. I mean, prior to World War I, there's no clear exact reason besides the fact, and we're going to look at what causes this to happen. But there's this stockpiling of weapons. You're looking across the border, you're seeing that your neighbors building up their armies. You see that they're building up their navies. And maybe that's because they considered each other as a threat. And then you begin to stockpile these weapons. And as you're looking across your borders and you're saying, wow, these people are stockpiling weapons, what's the natural reaction is going to be that you too are going to stockpile weapons. Okay, it actually becomes kind of referred to as the gang mentality. The concept that all these people have something. They have something that you can't really deal with on an individual basis. So the gang mentality, okay, all of them become gangsters, okay, under militarism. Remember that word, gangsters. And that's basically what they're becoming. Okay, so now looking at the A in main, we have, of course, what is it? Alliances, okay? And that also plays into the concept of that gang mentality. And the school's getting ready to do this play on West Side Story. If you listen to this later on, this was a year of 2013 that we're going to be doing actually it'll be 2014 when they do the play. But the West Side Story actually is a good example of alliances. If you are the concept being that if you actually go into alliances are kind of like the gangster concept, where if I go out of the street and meet a bunch of people in the street, and I'll walk up to one of these people and slap one of them. Now, if it was just one-on-one, it's just an individual conflict. But because of the fact that if you were to do this and then you're going to have to deal with everyone else that's involved as well. So it's that whole gang mentality that deals with the alliances as well. So it basically builds a world, or creates a world that's a house of cards, and it's just waiting for somebody to knock down that house of cards, and that's what's going to create it, and it's going to become very fragile, just waiting for someone to knock down that house of cards. Okay, so our next letter we're going to look at is I. Okay, in the main, remember the main spark, M-A-I, and the I is imperialism. You could also replace imperialism if you wanted to with industrialization. They kind of go hand in hand. They're not the same word, okay, without a doubt, but they do. The I can stand for either one of them. You could replace it for industrialization or imperialism. But imperialism being a key concept, okay, it's the hunger for new materials and raw materials. And we had this during the exploration period, the same concept. The hunger for additional materials, additional raw materials, and the colonization concept. And that all plays into the imperialistic ideology that feeds. You're feeding the beast. Okay, you have to build up the factories, you have the big businesses, you have a surplus, people building up surpluses. So it's a competitive market that begins to create around the earth and around the planet, and you have this competition that's developing due to industrialization. That's why I say imperialism and industrialization are hand in hand. You probably would not have had the imperialistic period that many of these nations go through if it had also not been for industrialization. So industrialization does play hand in hand with this imperialistic concept. Okay, now, of course, the end, without a doubt, is nationalism, and we talked about this extensively in class. This concept that my nation is the best nation, and no other nation is better than my nation, and this almost blind following. Just due to the fact that this national pride that each person had in their country. And again, you have to remember that this also, all these play in together. These are intertwined with one another. So nationalism of itself is just nationalism. But when you tied in the imperialism, when you tied in the alliances, and the material and the militarism that takes place during this period, all this plays a key role into creating the stepping stones for for nationalism. Okay, so you have all of this. That's just this collectively. All this stuff is just kindles. It's just like kindling wood. It's sitting there. It's just waiting for someone to strike a match. And we know what happens when you flip a match into the kindling. What do you get? Well, you know what you get, right? Okay. So what do you need to start a fire? That's right. You need a spark. Any spark. And it just takes one to get it going. And once the spark, excuse me, sets the kindling off, you're going to have a fire. And unfortunately, it's going to be really difficult to put the fire out. So what is a spark? Okay, so this is our other concept. Remember, we have the main, so you have those elements within the main that you should know. And the spark is actually the Archduke Ferdinand of Austria. Okay, he's a prince. He is the spark. Actually, him in and of himself is part of the kindling, but the spark being that when he gets assassinated. So why do they assassinate him? And this is what really kicks off the whole concept of World War I. And the reason he is assassinated is this sense of nationalistic pride. I cannot speak. So nationalism is the key reason that the Archduke is assassinated. Now, his wife is a byproduct. So, and I know that sounds really bad to say that, hey, your wife is just a byproduct. But, I mean, killing the wife did really nothing, and it probably would not have sparked the incident that it did if it had been just her that was assassinated. I mean, that's argumentative and it's interpretative. But the most likely, if only the wife had been killed in this attempt, then it probably wouldn't have turned into the incident that it does. But unfortunately, we know it does. So in this event that brings down it is the event that brings down the House of Cards. Okay, you have all these tangling alliances that exist. So we have to look at exactly what creates all this. And again, it's key that you know each one of these and how they tangle into one another and how they overlap each other, because that's also an important concept within this thing. Okay, so we kind of have to understand the order. So I need you to hold on and let's see if we can follow this, how it works. Okay, so you had to know this whole sequence of events. Okay, first you have the Serbian shoots an Austrian. Okay, then you have Austria declares war on Serbia. Then you have Russia declares war on Austria. You have Germany declares war on Russia, and you have Great Britain that declares war on Germany. Okay, so that's your sequence of events. And then you also have to remember that, as I said, there's new inventions and everything else. But one of the key elements to this is Germany has a new weapon. Okay, it's known as the submarine or also as the U-boat. It's a new toy for Russia. For Germany. It's been in development. Other countries are actually, the submarine has been around. It actually was used in the American Civil War, but not successfully. So the submarine had not been successfully developed where it was efficient, where it could be easily used and undetected. So but Germany perfects this toy, the U-boat. All right, now we know that that Germany actually ends up sinking the Lusitania. This is an actual newspaper article from that was appeared in the New York Times when the Lusitania is sunk. Now you have to understand that the Lusitania after the fact, okay, this is one of those after the fact things. It's revealed originally the Lusitania is targeted because it's supposed to be a neutral ship. It was supposed to be, and as it, the article presents, it was sunk by a submarine. It was twice torpedoed, sunk within 15 minutes, and it's just a crisis. It's a horrible thing, and it's built up as being a terrible thing that Germany has done. But later on, we do find out that the U.S., as we talked about, in class, that it tries to remain that neutral concept because it's benefiting economically by selling arms to everyone. So it is selling arms to the Allied powers and Central powers, especially Austria, Germany, and even Italy. And the It's another article that the Seattle Star that trumps the concept of how horrible the German people were and what they did. Okay, then a notice is put out. To all travelers embarking on the Atlantic voyage, you're reminded that a state of war exists between Germany and her allies, and Great Britain and her allies, that the zone of war includes the waters adjacent to the British Isles, that in accordance with formal notice given by the Imperial German government, vessels flying the flag of Great Britain or any of her allies are liable to destruction in those waters, and that travelers sailing in the war zone on ships of Great Britain or allies do so at their own risk. Now, Germany claims that, hey, we put out this notice, so therefore we're not responsible for what happens to your ships. But if you're a neutral country, the argument can be made that you're neutral. You're selling also to Germany. You're selling to everyone. So therefore, if you're flying a neutral flag, you should not be sunk. So what is the Americans actually create the Suez Pledge, or get Germany to agree to the Suez Pledge, which basically says that they will not have an undeclared submarine warfare. In other words, before they sink anybody, this was part of the agreement, that Germany would surface their subs, they would announce that they're going to sink it, that they would give them ample time to embark off of the ships before they did sink it. Now, the also agreement was too that they would no longer sink neutral ships. Now, the U.S. kind of gives Germany a strict warning that if you do this, then you're going to push us in over the edge. So they warned Germany that if you start this unrestricted submarine warfare up again, where you're sinking anyone or anyone that comes into the waters, then you will also have a new enemy, the United States. So, in other words, stop sinking our ships, or else. Now, the feather that breaks the camel's back in this war, as far as the United States goes, is when Germany actually sends a message to Mexico asking them to possibly attack the United States. I'm going to read this as it is, not insulting your intelligence, but just to read it. We intend to begin on the 1st of February unrestricted submarine warfare. So immediately they're actually announcing to Mexico, listen, we're not going to follow the Suez Pledge. So we're just telling you that we're not going to do that. We have endeavored in spite of this to keep the United States and America neutral. In the event of this is not seceding, we make Mexico a proposal of alliance on the following basis. Make war together. Make peace together. Sounds pretty, doesn't it? Generous financial support and understanding on our part that Mexico is to reconquer the lost territory in Texas, New Mexico, and Arizona. So basically what they are telling Mexico is, listen, we're going to break the Suez Pledge. We're going to try to keep the United States neutral at all costs if we possibly can. But in the event that we're not successful, hey, Mexico, declare war on the United States. And, hey, you will inform the president of the above most secretly as soon as the outbreak of war with the United States of America is certain, and ask a suggestion that he should, on his own initiative, invite Japan to immediate adherence and to the same time mediate between Japan and ourselves. Okay, so in other words, Mexico, you help us and we'll help you. Now, this telegram was never meant to be intercepted, but it was. So it becomes the one thing that really pushes the United States over the edge. Now, the other thing that happens is that Russia pulls out of the war, mainly because of the Bolshevik Revolution that's taking place in Russia. So Russia feels that it's not going to try to fight two wars at one time. It's having its own revolution within its country. Lenin begins to take power, um, and outs all the Bolsheviks within Russia. So he doesn't want. They don't want to fight two wars. So they pull out of the war. So now the powers are unbalanced. And so what's going to happen is that America will enter the Great War in April of 1917. Now, once they pull out, the United States comes in, um, and basically what we do when we come in is that we offer the knockout blow in the war. So we're able to do that, and we're not in the war for very long. Uh, so we actually don't have the losses that many of our the Allied powers or the Allied powers actually have because of the fact that we entered the war very late in the war. Okay, so the results of World War One are the Treaty of Versailles, and there's a lot of things that on this map that Germany loses their colonies. It becomes the Rhineland becomes a demilitarized zone. Germany, as we said in class, gets majorly punished. And remember, because of that one document that was made an agreement between Germany and Austria when this war starts off. That remember Germany offers Austria a blank check to start this war, and we talked about that pretty well in a lot. So we have the Treaty of Versailles. Okay, Germany is made to pay for the war. Wilson tries his 14 points. The key parts being of the land, military, who to blame, and the money concept. Um, so Germany is made, like I said, paid for. But Wilson's 14 points fails, especially his League of Nations. I mean, that's a major failure. Unfortunately, because of the fact that this is something Wilson really wants, but unfortunately, the United States Senate does not back him. Now, he actually goes over. He gets blamed for taking a very partisan group with him. He comes back. He is unsuccessful in convincing the United States to become a part of the League of Nations. And the reason that they do not want to become a part of the League of Nations, that they feel that the United States will be relinquishing some of its sovereignty by being a part of it. So the Wilson's 14 points, especially the League of Nations, becomes more of a organization with a lot of bark and no bite, and mainly because the United States at the time is the power. It has become the power in the world, the main power. That again, as I said, they're unscaled. They come out unscathed. Well, there are losses, as we always said, but the fact that they don't suffer as badly, so they come out very good. So, with that said, we have the main consequences of World War One. Okay, the main consequences of World War One, guys, is World War Two, and remember that. So, on a test, if you get asked what was the main consequence of World War One, it is World War Two, because the issues that existed prior to World War One are not resolved. World War One does not resolve them. Many historians call World War One nothing more than a quasi-war, which basically means everything almost pointing back to where it was at prior to World War One, and nothing really gets resolved. So, in other words, all those issues that are laying there were laying there before World War One are now still laying there after World War One. So it really basically sets the stage for World War Two. And you're talking a very amount short of time. You're supposed to be at the war that ends all wars, but unfortunately, you're not, because now, just a few more years later, you're going to have World War II. Okay, guys, so let's recap real quick. You have the main. M is militarism, alliances, imperialism, or industrialization, whichever one you want, nationalism, excuse me, and spark was the assassination of Archduke Ferdinand. Okay, guys, hope you enjoyed the presentation. I hope it helps you. I hope it's a lot of help. Go out and create your own ripples in history. Talk to you later. I gotta stop this thing. I don't know how to stop this thing.